Hello comrades and peers. Today I would like to talk about a relatively simple and well-known method of quickly setting up larger armies of miniatures. Batch painting. A regular visitor to this channel, Grimburn, reported that he would like to paint one 15mm miniature per day this year. That sounds like a good, doable challenge. Until you think about holidays, birthdays and vacations. And something else. In the old days, when miniatures were scarce, I really painted one figure at a time. There was more time than miniatures. But today, with all these shiny models available, you would fast lose your track. Due to drying times and similar problems, a single figure takes significantly longer to be painted individually and exclusively. Only with batch painting you can hope to stay in schedule over a longer time. What is batch painting? Most of you will know this technique, but here's a short explanation. You start with a group of miniatures, which are to look similar at the end of the painting. Then you start painting one color on one figure and repeat this on all other miniatures. So for example, all skin is painted, then all armor, etc. In a perfect cycle, the first miniature is dried after you finish the last one. When I started painting, miniatures weren't just rare. I came from a role-playing background, so it made sense for me to paint one figure at a time. Each character had an individual color scheme and received full attention. If you can only buy 5+ figures per month, that isn't a problem. I started with batch painting when I re-entered the hobby with Warhammer 6th edition. No more ragtag warrior hordes, but more disciplined stage troops. The units became more uniformed and batch painting was therefore worthwhile in order to progress faster. However, I continued to paint heroes and special units individually. Today, when I paint historical figures, I mostly only use batch painting. Exceptions prove the rule, as we say in Germany. The number of figures I painted in a row increased. But I also had to learn what the limits of this method were, technically and personally. Let's look at the technical part first. The more similar and uniform the figures are, the more useful batch painting is. Since uniforms serve exactly this purpose, historical miniatures are usually ideal. My favorite example is Union troops from the Civil War. Very uniform and can be painted in large numbers. With Confederates it gets a little more difficult, but the number of variants is still manageable. With different or varying uniforms, for example, the Napoleonic Austrian line together with Jägers, things become more difficult. The benefit of repetition is lost because different color schemes have to be used in between, and we have a break in the process. Too large a number can also reduce the benefit. If the paint has to be refilled several times in a paint application, you have usually exceeded the optimal number of figures. The number of miniatures also plays a role in the personal boundaries. The more figures you paint at the same time, the better, That's not true. Miniature painting is a hobby, and as such, it should be fun, and it should appear relaxing. It should be positively distraction from your job or everyday life. But once you reach a certain number of figures, it becomes more of a challenge, something you want to get done. This quickly affects the quality of our painting jobs, but especially our mood. For me, this limit is 28 mil figures with 10 to 12 miniatures, depending on the level of details and other conditions. I usually paint Napoleonic 15 mil miniatures in groups of 16. Austrian lines sometimes up to 24, but there is a limit. I noticed this particularly with the epics. The American Civil War Union figures are really quick to do and are a joy to paint. With the 13 Seas War figures, however, I noticed that a complete unit of muskets plus pikemen wasn't so easy to do. On the one hand, for me the muskets differ so much from the pikes in terms of painting that I end up painting two groups, only now and then in one go. The front row of the pikemen in individual positions also slow me down in the flow. For me, strips and individual figures are probably too different. On the other hand, the number of figures to paint is simply too high. The boundary between pleasure and work is crossed. Riders, on the other hand, are more pleasant again, because they are much more uniform despite the different painted clothing. Where is your limit when batch painting? Or have you consciously not noticed any boundaries yet? It could also be a very individual problem for me. How many figures do you paint at the same time? Maybe one or two people will check their optimal amount and give feedback as to whether there is something to this problem or not. I would be very interested in that. Otherwise, enjoy painting miniatures this summer and your spare time. Till then, and take care.